Did you know that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet actually brought back and reused 10 lost and forgotten beta designs and remade them into Gen 9 Pokemon? Some of them are already well known and talked about, like Bellibolt. Not only does it look very similar to a Chansey, an actual Pokemon from Gen 1, but it's also been told to look very similar to Beta Politoed from the Pokemon Gold Space World demo. Of course, both Beta Politoed and Bellibolt are both big, chunky, cute round frog boys, already establishing the connection if you ask me, but they have much more going on than that. They both have two indisputable, prominent features shared amongst each other. The first is their bellies. They're both round and circular, one having rings, the other almost having the same thing, it's just missing the middle ring kinda. And their circular bellies both take up around the same amount of space, but the other and the craziest thing being their eyes. For both Pokemon, they have some cool looking eyes on the side, right? Wrong! Both Bellibolt and Beta Politoed's eyes are actually where you think their nose would be. And what you think their eyes are actually just eye-like bumps that are used for intimidation, since it's not really intimidating anything with its actual eyes. Now some of you may be wondering how it's so clear that Beta Politoed's eyes are also in the middle. And to that, I gotta bring up regular Politoed. Politoed is such a happy guy. You really think Beta Politoed will look menacing? No! You're just looking at it wrong. But now that I have your attention, you'll never look at it wrong again. Speaking of beta Pokemon, game design has to go through all kinds of different stages before being finalized, but the best place for you to enroll in studying game design has to be from today's sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University. Coming back from work after the holiday break can be a struggle. I know for me, picking up YouTube after this holiday break was a tough time as well. Just when you got comfortable, forgot about your work, perfected your vacation sleep schedule, reality returns. And it's not pretty. But of course, returning to work is a lot easier if you had a job that lets you live out your passions. So let's make 2023 the year where you start making that a reality. A great place to start is Southern New Hampshire University, who's sponsoring today's video. SNHU has been one of the largest accredited non-profit online degree offerings in the country, and I wanted to talk to you about their game development program. In this program, you'll learn how to create realistic, dynamic gameplay experiences with game AI, game physics, 2D and 3D graphics, and interface design. You'll also learn computer programming languages like C++, C#, and Java, and you'll learn 3D modeling and texturing with game art software. You'll learn how to research, develop, and contribute to advances and trends within the field of programming. Courses are taught by faculty with real-world experience. SNHU is radically affordable. Their online tuition rates are some of the lowest in the nation. Go to snhu.edu/HybridHero, also linked in my description, to see what the current average annual salary for a programmer is and request free information about the program. When you request information, a real person will hop on a call and discuss how the program could benefit you personally. It only takes one click to find your calling. One of the craziest and most obvious ones we have so far, of course, is Bombirdier. A lot of the Johto Beta Pokemon were scrapped entirely, meaning that they weren't even visible throughout the data from the 1997 Space World demo. But you know the Pokemon community. Somehow they were still able to get their hands on something crazy and find a ton of other Pokemon that were scrapped in development during this time. And one of those Pokemon was a Stork Pokemon, who looks very similar to Bombirdier. And by the way, shout out to SoulSilver on Twitter for being the one to catch a lot of these connections initially. It may not be as sleek as Bombirdier is, but it's evident that it has similar features. Its squinty eyes and color scheme of having lighter colors at the top and dark ones at the bottom are also very similar. And I know this sprite is without color, but if it actually did come out with its colors in black and white, then it pretty much fits perfectly. The only real thing is that the Stork Pokemon is carrying a baby similar to Kangaskhan, whereas Bombirdier isn't, it just ends up carrying rocks. So it still carries something, and in a similar fashion to the Beta Stork Pokemon as well. I gotta say, while some of these other beta design and Gen 9 Pokemon connections are a bit loose, both Bellibolt and Bombirdier are like definite confirmations in my head. We have a few more of those when it comes to some later Pokemon, but let's look at some looser connections for now. Continuing on with Johto, we have one of the most obvious ones, and that's for Farigiraf. Girafarig was one of those Pokemon who always kinda need an evolution, and it only received one 7 generations later in Generation 9. But did you know that Beta Girafarig in the 1997 Space World demo has similar elements? Obviously, Farigiraf and Beta Girafarig look far different, and actually I know a lot of people who are hoping that Farigiraf ended up looking way more like Beta Girafarig, and even having Beta Girafarig's typing of Dark and Normal added on to Farigiraf, making it a Psychic Dark type. But it didn't. Oh well, I still think Farigiraf is pretty neat, and I still think Girafarig's tail coming to take over the head in a way is a bit dark. So that and the darker color scheme that Farigiraf has going on could possibly be tied to Girafarig's beta design. I don't see too many elements from its pre-evolution sprite though, and thank God we end up getting an evolution Giraffe rig and not a pre-evolution. Did I say continuing with Johto earlier? Well, most of these are Johto because the Gold and Silver Space demo was a godsend. But continuing on with the cross-gen evolutions here, if you weren't aware, our favorite boy Wooper was never supposed to exist the way it does today. It was actually supposed to look very, very different. Meet Beta Wooper, who's on all fours and is a good old boy. He's big and blue and on all fours and has spikes on the side. Does that sort of remind you of anyone? Cause Clodsire seems to take inspiration from this guy. The derpy face, only on all fours, big and not blue obviously, but that's for obvious reasons of it being a poison and ground type rather than a water and ground type. And both Beta Wooper and Clodsire having spikes on their body, Clodsire just comes out and retracts when needed. I'm pretty sure this is why Clodsire is so adored anyways, because it has the derpy and cuteness factor that still remains with Wooper, whereas Quagsire kinda lost it in its evolution. But to me, the craziest thing is that this was gonna be Wooper. I mean, just come on, think about it. We were this close to losing the design of one of the most beloved and stupid Pokemon of all time. Another design that people talked about even during the trailers of Scarlet and Violet was Pawmi, and how it looked oddly similar to the original Firestarter of the Johto region, Honoguma. Now if you ask me, this resemblance isn't the craziest one, and I think depending on how you look at it, Pawmi, you either see it or you don't. I usually don't see it myself, but sometimes when I look at the official Pawmi art, I look at it and I'm like, well, yeah, it's cute, it's got similar eyes and maybe ears and the same kind of stature, so I kinda see it, but that all goes away the moment Pawmi stands on two legs. But who knows, this might be why shiny Pawmi is red in the first place. Some may say that Gorochu is a part of the inspiration for Palmot, but that's where I personally draw the line. Hey, you know something that's not from Gold and Silver? This elephant looking Pokemon intended for Pokemon Red and Green. Now obviously this Pokemon probably became Donphan, and that makes sense since Donphan was shown off in the first Pokemon movie and all, showing that it was an early established design. But this beta design for the supposed Donphan could be inspiration for Great Tusks. Now obviously it's an elephant Pokemon, so there's obviously going to be some similarities no matter what. However, the angle and shape of both the Pokemon's tusks do resemble each other, and they both have spikes at the top of their body, which regular Donphan doesn't have, so it makes you wonder. Maybe Great Tusks, being an ancient form of Donphan, was just a nod in a way to its old ancient beta design from back in the day. Continuing on with some Paradox Pokemon that definitely took inspiration from some early Gen 1 beta designs, we have Omega and Iron Thorns. Now Omega is actually a beta design Pokemon that Ishihara, the Pokemon Company CEO, actually revealed to the world in 2018. And it's very obvious to see its relationship to Tyranitar, just the Mecha version. Tyranitar actually had another beta design that looks very similar to its final design, but it's more than likely that Omega was the first initial design that they had going, and something inspired from Mechagodzilla, which of course, Iron Thorns being the future version of Tyranitar, means that Omega fits right at home here. Almost the same, but opposite case of Donphan and Great Tusks from earlier. But the Gen 1 Paradox Pokemon trend doesn't end just there. Years ago, we got some leaked Gen 1 beta sprites, and back then, Magneton apparently had an evolution, which later got reworked into Magnezone. Now, we had Magneton and then we had this back sprite, but as you can see, the magnets at the top of the head have moved to the side, while the magnets at the bottom have disappeared. So what happened? Eclipse from Twitter theorized that most likely what ended up happening was that the bottom two heads of Magneton probably had their magnets shifted towards the ground to work more as legs, and this possibly could have even given them a ground typing, because remember, Steel wasn't a type up until Gen 2. Does this description of this Pokemon sound familiar? That's right. Sandy Shocks is literally just a rock and roll version of Beta Magnezone. It literally has the two magnets sticking out the side of its top head, and then magnets on the ground as legs. So this theory somehow crazily became true after all these years, and Sandy Shocks even ended up becoming an electric and ground type Pokemon. As for one possible legendary beta design similarity that we can go for, we have Chien-Pao to what is Beta Sneasel. Now obviously it being Beta Sneasel, you'd think that it bears more resemblance to Sneasel, but besides the claws, I don't see anything really. This beta Pokemon being an ice type, having the tail and body and face that it does look more similar to Chien-Pao than Sneasel. And oddly enough, the two Pokemon in question here are both ice and dark type Pokemon. Is it like a straight up obvious and crazy resemblance or something? No, definitely not. But I can definitely see certain elements used as an inspiration for Chien-Pao's design for sure. Because again, there are only 2 Ice and Dark type families right now, so it would make sense to use some elements from the beta design of the oldest one. So that's 9 beta Pokemon. What about the 10th? Well, that one is kinda up to you. See, in my eyes, I think Graveyard and Houndstone bears some similarities to Beta Suicune. It even looks like it was going to be a ghost type Pokemon at one point if you ask me, but not everyone agrees with that. Some other people think that Beta Apom was part of the inspiration for Grafaiai, but I personally don't agree with that myself. I mean, I see a bit when it's on all fours, but I just really see Apom here. And then again, we have Gorochu and Palmot, who I mean, like, come on, they're polar opposites, but with all 3 examples here, there's a bit of give and take. So that's why I'm like, instead of making this a 12 beta Pokemon video and putting an asterisk in the title, I made it a 10 Pokemon video with your choice as to who the 10th Pokemon would be. Or maybe there's a certain beta Pokemon design that everyone just looked over, but that you spotted, and if that's the case, you gotta let us know in the comment section down below, because there are a lot of beta designs used for new Gen 9 Pokemon. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care of yourselves, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you on the next one, alright? Later, bye!